You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hello, welcome back to Accounted For. Happy Wednesday, everyone. This is the podcast, part of OMD Ventures, which is a ecosystem that I created to be a place where people can be inspired to be unconventional in their life as well as their career. And in the respective careers, if you'd like to ask questions regarding anything related to your own career journey or my own, please reach out in the contact page, as I'm looking to do more AMA episodes. And if you'd also like to have potentially like a deeper conversation with me where, I don't know, maybe you want to get advice or you just want me to pepper you with questions, maybe that's what you want, please look up how you can do that in the contact page as well. You can just go to the website at omdventures.com and there is a contact link there. I think it's called Reach Out. Separately, the website URL should be omdventures/contact if you want something direct. Also, subscribe to the newsletter that I put out every week to be in the loop. The newsletter is continuously evolved, and now on top of keeping you up to date with all the weekly content like my essay, the podcasts, and the weekly learnings, I also exclusively write about what happened in the week in regards to my journey and try to be as more detailed in terms of the systematic updates I have in my life as well as the developments with the platform itself. So if you'd like to follow along on the journey, it's a little narcissistic of me, but if you're curious, definitely sign up for the newsletter. Okay, so today's guest is Shubha Dasgupta. He is the president and CEO at Capital Lending Center, CLC for short. That's what we will refer to continuously in the intro. CLC is a brokerage house for mortgage brokers in Canada that grew from just 6 people in 2017 when Shubha started with his partner Kendall to more than 160 now, I believe, in 2019. And, I'm sure you guessed it, it is one of the fastest growing mortgage brokers in the country. And when Shubha and his partner Kendall started CLC, they wanted it to be a new kind of mortgage brokerage house, one they wish they had when they first started. Shubha's been in the mortgage industry for more than 10 years. And before this part of his career, he actually started a transportation logistics business with a friend right out of high school. And so he entered this old trucking business and this whole kind of old archaic industry with wide open as his 18-year-old and built a business that would eventually be transporting toys made in Toronto all the way down to Disney World in Florida. And he would even make these trips himself as well. And in our chat, we just talk through Shubha's entire entrepreneurial journey from the trucking company to the mortgage company and what it's just like to be in these two archaic industries. One he conformed into, for example, in the trucking industry, and one he's constantly trying to change right now with his new current mortgage company. And we also talk about the lessons he had from starting the different businesses and how two really big pivotal moments in his life involving the first one involving his grandmother and the second one involving his mother really altered his career trajectory, as well as how it formed his current passion for philanthropy. And this has actually been, I think, a very interesting conversation where we actually look at industries that aren't really, I think, in the hot topic button in this modern days world of high, fast-growing tech companies, but industries that I think majorly impact the lives of many Canadians. And so this was very informative for me personally, and a conversation I really enjoyed. So please tune in for our conversation with Shubha. Hey everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today on the podcast, we have Shubha Dasgupta. Hey Shubha, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, how are you, Daniel? Thanks so much for having us.
No problem. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Shubha here is the president and CEO of Capital Lending Center, and in short, we'll call it CLC throughout the conversation. And so, Shubha, for the audience members who may not be familiar with your company, what do you guys do? What kind of company is CLC?
Yeah, so CLC, Capital Lending Center, is actually one of the fastest growing mortgage networks in Canada today. We started January 1st, 2017 with 6 mortgage agents. We have over 160 today, represented across 3 different brands. Essentially what we are is we're the first data-driven mortgage brokerage in Canada, and we harness the power of data and analytics on delivering a higher level of service to both our mortgage agents and in turn as well to their referral partners and customers. So essentially how we differentiate ourselves from our competitors is that we are a central servicing hub for mortgage agents. So mortgage agents that work with our organization are able to harness from various departments such as deal processing, document collection, as well as marketing, data analytics, everything down to compliance and payroll. So we support them in their growth and in their careers. And, we're having a tremendous ride so far.
Wow. Okay. And so for me to like wrap my head around better, and also for like my audience members who may not be very familiar with the mortgage industry, because unless you start buying a house, it's still a very foreign industry for us. So when I first type like mortgages in Google, the first thing that pops up is like Rate Hub. And I'm guessing Rate Hub, their business model is just telling me what rates are out there. But your business is one where you actually have the agents and they are the ones that actually like be selling me the mortgages.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of to take you through that workflow and for your audience, when you're looking for a mortgage in Canada, there's kind of 2 main places where Canadians would end up, either through one of the major banks, like, Royal Bank, Scotia, BMO, or you would go on the broker side. What the benefits are of the broker side is they have access to a large variety of Canadian mortgage lenders, such as the major banks like TD and Scotia, but as well as many other leading mortgage lenders like MCAP, First National, Street Capital, Merix, and even down to like alternative lenders like Equitable Bank, Home Trust, and even private lenders and mix, as we like to call them. So when a Canadian is looking for a home today, and if they Google like mortgages, you end up at like a site called Rate Hub, for example, which is a rate comparison site. When you click on one of those rates, you will be directed to then a mortgage agent or a mortgage broker. And those mortgage agents and brokers are going to be able to help facilitate that transaction for you, determine what options are best suited for your needs, really go over kind of budgeting, cost analysis, all that kind of stuff, and, find the best product for you. So those mortgage agents and brokers work for what is called a brokerage, essentially a house that supports and facilitates everything that a mortgage agent or broker could require. And that's what the Capital Lending Center network is.
Gotcha. And so the difference between you, like CLC, and other mortgage like brokerage houses is that you also do a lot of like the back end kind of systematic functions that help a mortgage agent, like helping with marketing, actually training them and going through stuff that another brokerage house might not do.
Absolutely. And that's really our main focus, right? So we have 3 main pillars within our organization when it was built, and that's support, training, and culture. So we work very heavily to create, different facets of those pillars, different subsections of those pillars, which in turn provide value to our agents. We had a very clear vision when we started this company, and our vision statement is that the CLC network is here to provide mortgage agents and brokers with the tools, systems, and support that they need to provide their referral partners and clients with a seamless customer experience. And essentially, those 3 pillars go to facilitating all of that.
Gotcha. And this idea of having like a mortgage broker, like, we also have insurance brokers, but I was actually in a project back when I was a consultant where we created a company where we can actually buy insurance direct now without actually having to go to a broker. Why is it that like this kind of stuff doesn't exist yet for mortgages? Do you see it ever coming? And
yeah, great question. And I mean, that's kind of where our company sets ourselves apart, right? So, we believe in the crawl, walk, run mentality. Which is often introduced in the technology world. And sometimes what happens is that tech goes from crawl to run. They'll introduce something very rapidly into the environment, and there's a lot of things that needed to happen prior to that. And consumer mindset is really one of the most important ones, right? Changing people's idea, changing people's behavior, and changing people's patterns. So, could that be in the future? Definitely. We're one of the leaders in driving some of the technology that's going to be able to deliver some more integrated solutions for customers directly and being able to take them through the process. But at the end of the day, one of the main things things that we've learned is that this is a very large transaction for customers, and that customer mindset's just not there yet where they feel fully comfortable in making such a large decision without having any professional guidance. Even if it's from like a management perspective of having an expert just behind the scenes to be able to guide you, direct you, and provide you some insights into what you're exactly choosing. There's so many variables when selecting a mortgage. Even mortgage agents and brokers get confused sometimes. There's, thousands of products available over Canada. Each one of them come with different rates, different criteria, different qualification methods. What that means for the customer is you don't know exactly what you can qualify for unless you have access to all these products. And then each one of them comes with different terms and conditions. So you may have different prepayment penalties or different exit costs. So really looking at all of these options and designing out what best suits a customer's needs is the benefit of a mortgage agent or a mortgage specialist.
Oh, because it gets very customized for like exactly what I need. And there's a lot of leeway. And
very customized and a lot of leeway. Like, it's very rare that we'll ever say no to a customer. It's really just, this is what your options are, right? So based on your circumstance, this is what you need to do for a down payment, and this is what your interest rate's going to look like. We'll go over what kind of their short, medium, and long-term plans are. That'll help design out what type of mortgage term we choose, what type of functions and features that mortgage has. Like mortgages have a function called portability, which means that if you're thinking that you're going to move within the term of that mortgage, that may be a function that's important to you because that allows you to take that mortgage with you to the next property without incurring any additional costs. So all these little nuances are the things that make mortgages a little bit complicated and complex, and scary to borrowers, right? So, to go back to your original question, can it ever get to the borrower? 100% it can. We need companies and we need leaders in our industry that are driving that forward, that believe in innovation, that believe in evolution, and that believe in change. And, those leaders are definitely starting to come out of the woodwork.
And right now for CLC, how many mortgages have you guys processed so far?
So since inception in 2017, we're just about on pace to hit about $1 billion in sales by the end of this year.
Wow.
So we'll close out this year since inception with about 980 to about $1 billion in sales.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's very big.
Thank you. Yeah, we're working hard, right? We really want to make it a service first type of environment, right? We want to make it so that the customer is getting what they deserve and our sales force is getting what they require in order to succeed. And, we found that there was a lot of gaps and a lot of voids in the mortgage industry. I've been in the business for about 12 years. And, when my partner Kendall and I set out to create this, it was really about filling those gaps and voids because, the smoother we can make the process for our sales force, the smoother they can make the process for the customer.
Mm-hmm. And so you said you also kind of quietly mentioned that you were in this industry for about 12 years, but I kind of want to take it back even further to maybe, your early days as, growing up here.
Yeah.
Did you grow up in Toronto?
Yeah.
Your hometown?
Born and raised in Toronto. I was born at East York General Hospital.
Okay.
My parents used to live at Don Mills in Eglinton at the time. Very early in my life, I think I was less than 1 year old, we moved to Scarborough, and that's where I grew up. So I grew up in the Midland and Finch area of Scarborough.
Okay. And so then growing up, was real estate a very big thing in your family? Like growing up, was it always like a conversation topic?
No, not at all. My dad was actually an accountant.
Really?
Yeah. My mom still does today, works in the medical field as a medical administrator. She works at Sunnybrook Hospital. But real estate wasn't a hot topic of conversation, so to speak. My dad actually did get his real estate license, though, when I was young. I think it was more of a hobby to him. He didn't really practice it, and it wasn't like he was selling tons and tons of properties or anything like that. So, yeah, the love of real estate and the passion of real estate, I think I really developed it later in life, seeing it as a really good vehicle to help Canadians build wealth. And home ownership, to be honest, is just something that's so important. And one of the things that drew me to real estate was that every Canadian deserves to have a roof over their head, and a home is different things to different people. But at the end of the day, a home is comfort. A home is security. A home is a place where, families raise their kids and they have backyards that they can play in and roads where they can learn to ride their bikes. So a home means so many things to Canadians, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I really wanted to be a part of something so big in their lives.
How did this narrative of like the importance of home kind of get distilled into you?
I grew up in a very safe environment, right? I had my parents there, and I also grew up with my grandmother. So my grandmother was living with us from the day I was born, and a huge part of raising me. She raised me from the age of 0 to 14 years until she passed away. And after she passed away, I think I realized and began to understood the importance of the environment that they had created for me. That safety, that security, that comfort of knowing that whatever happens outside the doors, when I come back home, that was a space that I can be safe in, and I can discuss things and talk about things and learn kind of freely. So, and it's never something that you think about when it's leading you into a career. But when I began exploring what the different options were and where I was going to go next in my career, and came across the mortgage industry, that was definitely a driving factor in my decision of knowing how important homes are and what they can mean to somebody's life.
And before you entered the mortgage business, you first started in logistics, like transportation and logistics at, was it the age of 20?
Yeah.
When you first started your company, Transport Trends?
Yeah. Started my first company very young. It was a logistics and transportation company. So we had a couple of trucks that were doing North American contracts. Like our biggest contract was actually in Disney World. So we used to ship cookies from Ontario to Florida to the Disney World. And we used to pick up citrus fruit from Florida and bring it back to Ontario. We also had a service that was providing logistical support for the Zellers outlets here in Southern Ontario. So we would pick up from their main distribution center and basically take all of Zellers products within their stores in, Niagara region and all around the Golden Horseshoe. So ran that business for a few years. That's a tough business. That's a tough business, especially at a young age. I wasn't ready for a lot of the politics and a lot of the pressures of that type of a high pressure industry. So definitely, saw that through as far as I could until about the age of 27, and that's when I exited, sold that to the partner that I was running it with, and began looking for my next adventure.
And what kind of the pressure cooker, like politics situation, kind of comes to mind quickly when you try to reminisce?
You know what? Time? Like it's a there's not a lot of contracts up for grabs, right? So companies are after those contracts, like companies that are in the business of deliveries or that needs products to be delivered. There's almost like this small little segment of people that are after the same bid. So you'll see the same people time and time again. And, we had no longevity and no experience and no connections, and no capital, right? We were really young and we just didn't have the money backing us. And, we were up against massive companies like Schneider's, which is like a global leader in that space. And, it's difficult to compete when they got a satellite up in space that tracks product. And here we are, a couple 20-year-olds saying, no, we want to make this happen, right? So it was definitely an experience, definitely part of the journey, and definitely a lot of important lessons learned that got me to where I am.
What was a big lesson that sticks with you from that time?
Never stop was really one of the big ones, right? The amount of doors that you get slammed on your face that early in your life can either discourage you or it can encourage you. And I found that it really encouraged me, right? To get turned down and to get to hear no after no after no. Eventually when you hear that yes, it taught me that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And it taught me that, it's not important how many times you hear the word no. It's all about when you hear that yes, right? Mm-hmm. So even as it brought me into the mortgage business and throughout my entire life personally, the no's don't affect me as much. Definitely helped me get that thicker skin.
And you mentioned how you and your partner, a couple 20-year-olds in this kind of trucking logistics business. And I actually had one of my past guests. He's an entrepreneur whose entire family is actually in the trucking business. So he started a company that tracks logistics for trucking companies. And when I was talking to him, he was telling me about how, it's, they're kind of more conservative. They tend to be of an older age and they have a way of doing things. And so I can only imagine, yeah, like 20-year-old kids trying to do this trucking company. There'd be a lot of obstacles in the way.
You're absolutely right. It's one of those industries that's almost been left unchanged, right? You look at it and it's the same as it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And it's changing today with the introduction of technology and digitization and everything. However, you asked what lessons I learned from that. The mortgage industry is very similar. And, when we got into the mortgage industry, we saw, and as we kind of took our journeys, both my partner and I, early in our careers, we began to see that, why are we still doing things the same way we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Why haven't those things changed and evolved and innovated? So when we began our company, it was really, part of that, right? And one of our mottos is change is here. And we are driving forward a lot of that positive change that's required in our industry today in order to, crawl, walk, and run. We want to get to that run stage where our industry is now looked at as a leader in that environment, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I guess like as you connected it, there's definitely this, this focus of going into this boring old industry and working within it and noticing the change and trying to become the change. And so, but when you started, how did you even see the light in terms of the transportation industry? Like, how did that even come up to you? Your parents weren't in that business. What propelled you and your partner to even like start a business there? Like, did you? And I think you didn't go to university, right? You just went straight into that business from high school. Yeah,
straight in. I did post-secondary after that. During it and after it actually.
Right.
But what got me into it was my partner. Actually, I wouldn't say I'm super impulsive, but I'm pretty impulsive.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot to convince me. If I see that there's opportunity, I'll process it and I'll make the decision fairly quickly. So at the time, my old business partner on that company, brought it to my attention. He's like, listen, there's a lot of opportunity in this business, right? Goods always need to be shipped. Customers always need to be serviced, and product is endless, right? And, we did look at some of the trends that were happening, and we did look at the fact that, the industry or, what we had thought with the introduction at the time of Google and eBay and all that kind of stuff that, we may lead into a more delivery-based economy, right? So this type of a service could be of great value, not only today, but tomorrow. So yeah, it was literally just someone bringing it to the attention, doing the market analysis and saying, let's do it.
Oh, and how did your parents take that?
I come from a very old-fashioned, old-school type of Asian background, right? So school is definitely priority. Education is definitely priority. So they did have their concerns about, do you really want to get it right into the workforce today? Like, don't you want to take the time and go through the proper course of education and just the way that it's always been done, right? But as you can see and as you can begin to hear, I'm never all the way that it's always been done type of a person, right? I think that the world doesn't need to be done in the same order or in the same process or in the same methodology as it was in the past, right? And one of the things that I've actually talked to my mom about and my dad is that, parents, and I'm a parent now of 2 small children, and I hope that the same thing doesn't happen to me, but parents will use their life experiences to pass on to their children. Yet they're using experiences from a different generation, right? So different experiences, different time, different ideas, different methodologies, different beliefs. For my parents, it was even different location. They grew up and they were born and raised in India. So you can't always take those beliefs and apply them to where they are today. I think what's important is that adaptation, right? Being able to use the core values, which I don't think that I've ever lost. My morals, my ethics, and my values are what's been instilled in me from my family from the day I was born, but applying it into the world as it is today, right? Especially for our parents, with the massive digitization that we've experienced over our lifetime, we're comparing apples to oranges, right? Like it's 2 different worlds. And I don't think that everything has to happen the way that it used to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And in terms of then actually starting the business, like trucking, I didn't even know that someone actually drove a truck from Toronto all the way down to Florida to make that long drive. And so were you the one actually driving the truck, or what role did you play like within the company? Was it actually acquiring the trucks and having hiring the drivers and being the person behind doing the whole logistics? Like, what was it?
Yeah, so my role essentially was more sales, marketing, and management. So you're absolutely right. I used to more acquire the contracts, manage the contracts, make sure that they were getting, our service levels were being met, and we were accommodating everything that they needed, hiring the drivers and making sure that the routes and everything were planned and tracked accordingly. But everybody in our company had to have a license. I was no different. So I did have my AZ license at the time. And when we had to, we would definitely get behind the wheel. So I've done that trip a couple times, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I used to actually ride it with our drivers. And I would have to go down monthly to reconcile the accounts and everything like that. So instead of going down on my own or flying down or anything, I would go down on one of the routes with our driver, make it a road trip almost. And it's a pretty fun trip,
How long is that drive?
From Toronto to Florida, to where we were going is about 24 hours straight.
24 hours straight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you guys take breaks in between?
So trucks have beds, truck have fridges, trucks have everything today. So you sleep in the back and somebody else takes the wheel, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So they keep a logbook. And it's funny. That's one of the archaic things of, back then when I was in it. You have to track this logbook of how long you're driving for consecutively, how long you're sleeping for. And, you have to present that to the ministry, on request, right? To show them that you're not driving over your hours or anything like that. And those are just some of the things that, when I look back and I reflect now that we're having this conversation, like, man, I could have changed that. We could have done that on like an Excel spreadsheet or, have built some kind of app for that. And I'm sure there is today, but there definitely wasn't when I was in it.
So did you try to like make changes though within it? Like when you saw it, like did you try to implement something completely different?
At that time, probably not, I would say. I think I was kind of just getting my footing into kind of my life and where, I fit into the workplace and all that kind of stuff. So I was never that bold as to at a young age kind of think that I knew it all. And even in the mortgage business, as I just kind of said, I've been in this business for 12 years. My partner's been in this business for almost 10. And we started this company 2 years ago. Right. So we took our time in learning the business, understanding it, never being as bold as to say, like, I'm going to come in and fix what's, broken without even realizing something's not broken. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm very patient and pragmatic from that standpoint.
And this journey, so you had the trucking company and then you sold it about like 7 years after operating. What made you want to transition to a different stage of your life?
You know what? It really wasn't for me, right? It was one of those things that I started very early in life, and like I mentioned, I'm somewhat impulsive, so I kind of jumped into it without really thinking about it too much. And I don't regret it at all. A lot of great experiences, a big part of the journey as to where I am today. But I realized partway through that it just wasn't for me. This is definitely where I didn't see my life. I didn't see this transforming my life and being a part of, the future of it, right? I'm very big on contributing back to society, making change, implementing change, but more importantly, making a positive impact on the world and the people around me. I didn't see that industry as a vehicle to be able to allow me to do that. Whereas, I wanted to look for kind of what that next thing was, where I can kind of create something that could have an impact on people.
And that from that decision, it took you to London in the UK. Why London?
I was just exploring some stuff out there. Europe is obviously a hub of the world, right? London is a big hub globally. So I wanted to see what was available. I think sometimes what I learned from that part of my life was that growing up in Toronto and being in Toronto my whole life, you realize that there's a whole other world outside of Toronto, right? And this world is global, and economy is global, and there's different ways people do business. There's different ideologies. There's different thinkings. There's different strategies. And a lot of these other places are either behind or ahead of us, right? So seeing it from the light of seeing all industry, and I mean like just business in general, from the light of, I think, London and from the eyes of London, really helped me change, kind of my outlook on everything, right? Because I was so, I don't know if you want to call it like pigeonholed, or I had this kind of tunnel vision because I was only here. I was here for so long, right? And London really opened my eyes to the fact that, anything is possible, and there's a lot of different ways of building business. There's a lot of different ways of enacting change in this world.
Did you try to start companies while you were in London?
Yeah, well, I was looking and exploring at what opportunities kind of they had, kind of seeing, how their banking sector worked, how their finance sector worked, because they are a global finance leader. A lot of countries have banking and stuff that's held out of London. So I was more exploring, right? More learning and more kind of just absorbing what was out there. And, definitely with the eyes open in terms of opportunity, right? So whether there was opportunity or there wasn't, turned out for me there wasn't. I had my eyes peeled on it, but I didn't want to just make it about opportunity. I wanted to also learn while I was there.
So did you just cold email people, have like a lot of curiosity conversation? Is that how you went about it?
Yeah, you know what? Just like all business, I think you get introduced to one person, two people, three people, and then that kind of snowballs, right? So yeah, I reached out to a few people. I got connected to a few people. So I didn't go out blindly. I went connected to a couple of people from the early stages, and then met some people. They introduced me to some other people. Got to talking. We just started conversation. I began learning about their businesses and what they're doing. I met a lot of people like from other countries. Lots of people from other countries that moved to London to start business, import, export. They were doing like more like global type stuff, right? Because London was that central hub that connects kind of the Eastern world to the Western world. So yeah, it was an incredible experience.
And so then you came back from London to Toronto, and I think the business you looked at was biodegradable packaging.
Yeah.
Sourcing it from India.
Yeah.
Was that an influence from the global business you saw in London?
So that was, some things that I learned out in London. One of the things that I learned out in London was to watch trends, right? Watch trends very carefully, like globally, not just in your specific segment, right? So I began watching trends, and the trends were leading globally to kind of the sustainable lifestyle, right? We were leading towards, let's get rid of plastic. Let's get rid of packaging. Let's start creating a stronger world and a better world for the next generation. And that was something that yet hadn't trickled into Canada yet, right? It was kind of a global influence at the time. So when I came back and I began exploring that option, it was right just before the time that, I don't know if you remember when the city of Toronto banned plastic bags, right? So it hit me at that moment, right? Because we were exploring this option, and then this gets introduced. So I'm like, it's here, right? The time is here. So yeah, we began looking at biodegradable packaging and, sourcing it from India. My family still lives in India. My mother, my father, and my brother are the only ones here in Canada. So did have resources and contacts over there. So began looking at that as an opportunity. And, again, it was now everything at this point forward is based on that impact and what kind of impact can I have on the world. Right. So, I looked at this opportunity and said to myself, yeah, this is something I can see myself doing because I'm having a positive impact. I'm creating change. I'm leaving the world a better place than when I got into it. Right. And all of those things. So definitely looked at that as something that could be big in my life.
And when you constantly talked about the ability to see trends. And I think the way I would categorize trends as being in like two kind of different buckets. There's a cyclical trend that a lot of people constantly see throughout global economies, and then there's the secular trend where it's a big change. It's like the internet came. Mm-hmm. Things are not going to go backwards from there. What's your kind of process of deciphering what's a cyclical one versus like a secular one?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question, right? Especially in the finance business, because in the finance business, we're always looking at the secular, right? We always talk about history will dictate the future, and we always talk about here's the economic trends, and here's the precursors that you can look for recession or market crashes and all that kind of stuff, right? So really how I look at that is business is always going to be secular. Life is always going to be secular. There's always going to be kind of this circle that we're evolving in and transpiring in. But in that circle, there's always going to be big points in the world and in your life where we get those other trends that are just changing, that are just dramatic, right? Industrial revolution, digital revolution, like the internet revolution, right now personally, I have a word, and I don't know if other people use it, is the data revolution, right? So right now we're really harnessing the power of this data and what it means to people, what it means to the way that we live and all that kind of stuff. So when I look for those kind of opportunities, I really look at what can be done with it and what can industries do to implement that to make improvements and to better the way that we do, business, the way that we live our lives even, right? So to me, it's not always about business. It's always been about improvement, right? About getting better, and getting better.
And then, so while you're planning out this biodegradable company, your mother got into an accident, and so you stopped pursuing that to take care of her, and then the opportunity ended up, I think, passing, and distributors picked different partners. What made you go down a different route into the mortgage industry instead of continue to trying to find a way to make this biodegradable thing work?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was interesting because that type of a change in your life has a massive impact, right? So what happened was, midway through the process, I had a couple big contract negotiations lined up with, some of the largest distributors in Canada. And right before those meetings were set to take place, my mom was in a life-threatening car accident. And she was on life support for 18 days. She was in critical care for another 30 after that. So I had to make a decision to either be by my mom's side or, focus on the business and focus on a business that I wasn't focused on at the moment, right? Because nothing else was in my mind other than, my mom and seeing her through this and being by her side through this. So I made the choice, and, it's the right choice, which was to be by my mom's side, make sure that she was taken care of, make sure that she was okay. And after that moment happened, the opportunity had passed by in terms of with the distributors and stuff. They obviously couldn't wait. There was other people that were bidding on it, and there was other people that were involved in this. So they went with another company to distribute across Canada. And why I didn't push forward on it was really the emotional impact of what I went through with my mother, right? It was the fact of you come to a realization when you're about to lose something that important. Is what I'm doing that important, right? Is what I'm doing really, what I need to be doing? And I'm sure that I could have persevered and overcome that obstacle and driven forward and got it done. But I decided to pivot at that moment because I didn't want to, how do I want to phrase this? I didn't want that to be the legacy starting with that moment in time, right? And I didn't want to always have to reflect back when I look back at my journey on that as the starting block, right? This dark moment in my life where my mom was, fighting for her life in the hospital, right? So I kind of wanted to get that out of my life as fast as possible and start fresh, start with a clean slate and continue to do something positive, but just from a totally different angle where I can look back now and reflect on it as to that's what got me into the mortgage business, so to speak, but I don't have to look back on it as that was a part of where I am today,
right?
If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Like you want to compartmentalize that kind of event out and look at it in a different light. I can definitely see that. Exactly. And but being like a mortgage broker, it seems like such a very different business model than the logistics business, or even if you were to go through like the biodegradable like packaging route, because a mortgage broker, like I think from our first conversation, you told me it's 100% commissioned, and you're practically like a self-employed person, but you're, even though you might be part of a mortgage like brokerage house, you're still kind of a company of one. Whereas before, you ran like a bigger company, like one with employees and trucks, and you're thinking about another play into like the packaging space. So it seems like a very kind of different kind of entrepreneurial venture. What pushed you to try this part out? Like what? Because I feel like there would be a propensity to kind of want to do like start a company, hire people, have like a bigger operation.
Yeah. So how it came about was, interesting. My mom got into her car accident. It was Labor Day, how many ever years ago. And, by the time she was out of hospital, let's say around November, that November actually, so my wife, I know exactly when it was because early November she got out of the hospital. My wife's birthday is November the 19th. My now wife, she was then my girlfriend, and I proposed to her on her birthday. Nice. So I know the dates, and you know what, that was actually, a part of that experience as well. Just short story to digress, I realized in that moment that my girlfriend was the one, because, I'm a family of two boys, me and my older brother. And when my mom was in hospital and my girlfriend would take the bus and the subway to Sunnybrook to see us every day after work and help bathe my mom and help shower my mom and help, change her clothes and all that kind of stuff, I realized in that moment that, she's the one, right? And I think so much good came out of so much bad in that moment in my life, right? Because I was able to, get out of that business that maybe or maybe not would have been great for me. I was able to start a life with my wife, still have my mother. My family's closer than ever from that moment. And it led me to the mortgage industry. And how I got to the mortgage industry was that same Christmas, we were at one of my, family friends' house for dinner. And, one of my, distant cousins was there, and he says that, what are you going to do next? Like, what's next on the agenda? And I said, I don't know. He's like, why don't you get into the mortgage industry? He's the vice president of a large mortgage company here in Toronto. And he's like, why don't you get into the mortgage industry? And, after that dinner, I went home, did some research on it. And that January, I was signed up for the licensing program, which is about a year-long post-grad certificate program. Did it at Seneca College. It's offered here through Seneca curriculums provided by University of British Columbia, and banged it out in a year, and rest is history. Right? That was about it.
What was obvious then when you were like doing your research? What made you go, oh yeah,
what was obvious was the fact, and that's when I really began discovering like the power of the home and the impacts that I can make on people's lives, right? Really getting them into home ownership. And then you dive deeper and you're like, how much wealth can be created through real estate? How much opportunity is there? I have three main pillars in my life that I live by: my business, my family, and my philanthropy. And philanthropy was always a big part of my life, even back then. So I realized that the mortgage channel was also a way for me to integrate philanthropy into it. A part of every deal that I can close can get donated. Through the contacts and the customers that I'm meeting, I can begin to raise awareness and get them involved in different charities and different philanthropic efforts, right? I can begin to have a larger voice that way, right? And, you start with one customer, turns to 4, turns to 16, turns into a career. And now all of a sudden you got all these little microphones, right? And it's not just about mortgages. My life never has been, right? But now, I'm educating so many people on cancer research and what that can do for people. I'm educating people on other philanthropic efforts. So it began to snowball into so much more. And I think, one of the suggestions that I'll always make, or recommendations that I'll always make to those that are coming up behind me, is always try to integrate all of your life pillars into one, right? And figure out how they can each kind of work with one another to deliver the true value of your life. Because your life is not just one thing. It's not just, playing hockey, work, and friends, right? How can all three of them integrate to each other? Does your hockey life become your friends? And I don't even play hockey, so I don't know why I'm using that as an analogy, but, how does that fit within your work life, right? So all that kind of stuff. And the mortgage industry, from when I began analyzing it, gave me clear perspective that I can do that.
I love that. Like an essay that I wrote, I think probably end of last year, that resonated with some people, was the idea that people constantly, I think nowadays, they're talking about like work-life balance and having compartmentalizing different aspects. But I made the argument that you actually want harmonization between work and life, because it's a holistic system. It's like if you looked at your life as like a mechanical watch, you have all these intricate gears that have to work perfectly, synchronously. And if you compartmentalize it, then they won't be talking to each other. Then they won't be able to properly tell the time. But you need everything to click properly, like family, health, work, everything.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is, right? I don't believe in the work-life balance. I believe in that harmonization that you just talked about. And, part of that has translated into the business, right? Because with that same ideology and concept, you're then able to not compartmentalize your business, right? So now we have our support department or our support pillar that integrates seamlessly with our training. They actually complement each other because part of our support system is training and education, translates right over into training. Those two pillars combined create the culture of our organization and who we are and what we stand for. And then when you add in the technology piece and the systems that we've developed and built over the last couple of years, all of that is essentially the glue that ties it all together, and they all integrate within one another seamlessly, right? And I think that, sometimes you come across things by accident, sometimes you come across things by luck. And I think that's possibly one of those things that I always knew I needed that harmony in my life. And then that harmony then began to translate into business, which led to success of the business, because now the business isn't, this department's not talking to this department, or this area doesn't know what that area is doing. Everything is interconnected and everything is harmonized.
Mm-hmm. And using the segue of success, like I think you mentioned before that 80% of mortgage brokers, they don't go past 2 years or something. Mm-hmm. And, before you started CLC, you've been a mortgage broker for close to like a decade. Mm-hmm. So you were definitely in that 20% that went past the 2 year, probably even a smaller minority percentage. Why is it? Like, what happens in the first 2 years that makes it so hard for people? Like, what was it like for you?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of research on this to try to really determine what it is. And, it came down to kind of a couple different principles, a couple very specific principles. So the first is the barrier of entry to get into this industry. So after, I just mentioned I did a 1-year post-grad certificate. That's what it used to be. Today, it's about a 2-week course, a licensing course, right? So, where my course cost me a year of my life and about $12,000, you can get it done now in 2 weeks and $400, right? Wow. No regrets. I mean, you obviously learn a lot more in a year, right, than you can in 2 weeks. But, that barrier of entry essentially means that people are entering this industry without necessarily the knowledge that's required in order to help them succeed, right? And I understand possibly why the decision was made to reduce it. We have a large population here in Canada. We have a large immigration policy here. A lot of people are coming into Canada, a lot of people specifically coming into Toronto on a year-by-year basis. We needed people to be able to support them to get into housing, right? So we needed to increase the level of, or the amount of mortgage agents and mortgage brokers that could deliver this service to the population, to the communities, right? But in that, you now have a disservice happening, because they're not being supported through their organizations, through their brokerages, and they're left to kind of figure it out on their own, right? And when you're left to figure it out on your own, a couple things are going to happen. And this is really what we discovered and where we got to with this. It's going to take you 6, 9, 12, maybe 18 months to learn about all of the policy, products, rates, guidelines, sales, marketing, business development, relationship management, client management, systems, tools, et cetera, right? Like, there's so many things that go into this business. But what's not happening during that time is you're not generating revenue. And if you get into any business or any career and you're not making money, unless you're sitting on, a vast wealth, you're not going to make it past that hump, right? So I think one of the big reasons why 80% of mortgage agents don't make it past that second year is because of that principle. So what we essentially did was, and what one of our focuses is that, because I don't like that number. I don't like the fact that 80% of people enter a career where they're not going to be in 2 years. There's no point in you coming then. And we have a responsibility, I believe, as an industry to make it clear that, we want to see you succeed in this. It's not about, give it a shot. And if you make it, you make it. And if you don't, you don't. It's if you entrust our organization with something as valuable as your career, something as important as putting clothes on your back and food on your table, we have a responsibility to make sure that we can help see that through for you, right? So what we did is we basically shifted the order in which mortgage agents are today learning, right? We began teaching them business development first. sales, marketing, relationships, revenue generating stuff, right? So that they can begin building their business, the foundation of their business. And then we provide them a full support department to be able to manage the rest, right? So when you have a customer, you have a full underwriting team that can process that application, submit it to the lender, get the approval, collect the correct documentation, fulfill the conditions, even compliance and payroll, right? So that you get paid. So you have everything from the back end supporting you from that perspective. And now when you're entering this career, you can focus on the front, right? And we're seeing that transform, we're seeing that change. I mentioned we started with 6 agents. We have over 160 today. We haven't lost any, and I know we're 2.5 years in, so we don't have a full metric yet of the results of what we're doing, but we're not losing agents. Agents are succeeding. They're closing deals sooner in their careers. They're generating revenue. More importantly, they're happy, right? They're happy because now they're not struggling, and now they're not left to figure things out on their own and kind of just flounder around in the water, right?
Wow. And so then I'm guessing when you first started in the industry, before your company existed, did you have to take care of the whole support thing yourself, taking care of payroll, compliance, and doing that?
100%.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
100%. So, I had to learn everything, right? I had to learn all of the different lender products. I mean, in Canada, most mortgage agents have access to about 40 lenders. Each one of those lenders have about, between 10 to 20 products that they offer, right? So you're learning hundreds of mortgage products, all of the guidelines. I keep up to date on the rates, and then figure out the business development side, the marketing, the social media management, lead generation, systems. At one point I was running 4 different CRMs just to upkeep my database, at a cost of, about $400 a month. Today we provide that seamlessly to our agents, right, for free. That's our responsibility. And that's really, I think, one of the main things that differentiates us from our competitors is that we believe that, we breathe that it is our responsibility to make sure that these agents have the tools, the support, and the guidance that they need to succeed, right? And the way the industry kind of is outside of our organization, and I love our industry, so don't take this as a negative. The industry does do a lot of positive work, and there are a lot of great companies out there, but mortgage agents are left to be independent, right? They're left to, if you want to run that system, go ahead, get it, right? Pay for it. You want to do your business this way, go ahead and get it, right? And without a little bit of consistency, 80% of people won't make it. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of where we saw it.
And but you were a broker for a very long time before you started this company, and so you could have stayed, just been a broker. What compelled you and Kendall to think about actually starting a company and taking that jump that most people wouldn't dare to take?
It's all the things that I just mentioned. It's if we don't stand up and take a stand for all of these people, and if we don't stand up in believing what we're saying, that the industry deserves better, that mortgage agents deserve better, people deserve opportunity, then we're no different than everybody else, right? So was it a big risk? Yeah. Could we have made, hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s annually? Like, we gave up hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and that's what we were both making in sales, right? And we gave that up to nothing, right? We didn't draw salaries, and we began investing in technology and training and all that kind of stuff, but we felt so passionately that it was our responsibility to be able to provide that to the community, to the industry. Listen, this industry's given us a lot, right? And we don't take that for granted. What other industry has allowed me an opportunity to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? What other industry has allowed me an opportunity to raise millions of dollars a year for charity? I've raised over $1.5 million for, various charities. Wow. What other industry has allowed me an opportunity to have a voice and to lead others and to provide for my family? And I don't take any of that for granted, and neither does my partner, either does Kendall. So if you don't take that for granted, it's our time now and our responsibility to give back. And that's what we're doing.
And in terms of how the actual structure works for a mortgage broker, what percentage does the commission come out to, in terms of the total sale?
Yeah. So, I mean, generally speaking, on average, you can say like 1% of a mortgage amount is like a commission, right? But then from there, there's a lot of associated costs, right? You have to pay your brokerage. That's how we earn revenue. You may have other systems and marketing costs and, all of that kind of accumulated, right? So depending how efficiently and effectively you can run your practice, it really depends on what you take home. And that's kind of where one of our key points was, that we don't want our agents to have to overspend on certain systems and tools that should be provided by their organization, right? Like if we know you need an email to succeed, then why should you have to go pay for an email, right? There's a reason why you're working for us, so we will provide you an email. If we know you need a CRM to succeed, we will provide you the CRM, right? And in return, it's back to that old adage, right? If you get what you pay for. And that's really one of the things that stood out to us. And one of the things that Kendall always says is, what are you paying your brokerage for? At our organization, everybody knows this is what we pay for, right? But we saw a trend where a lot of agents just don't know. I pay them because that's how it is, right?
Right, yeah, because it seems like if they didn't offer these kinds of services that, actually telling me, for me, I'm just thinking, that sounds so obvious. But if that didn't exist, what were people paying brokerage houses for?
Access to lenders, essentially, right? Okay. So in the past, mortgage brokerages were that access point. You have to meet certain volume criteria, volume targets, funding ratios, all that kind of stuff. So one person can't do it. So essentially, a brokerage was an aggregate of all of these smaller business owners that then allowed them to meet those targets, and they're all working together, right? Again, and this is just personal opinion. You can look at it as controversial statement or not. I feel that's the old way of business. The new way of business is providing processes and workflows and systems and ways that mortgage agents, salespeople, and brokers can succeed, right? To me, it's crazy that anybody would get into a business and be left to their own accord, yet have to pay for some kind of access or connectivity too, right? If we're going to pay for something, let's pay for something meaningful, and let's make this happen, and let's make a difference in this community, right?
Oh yeah, it's like you use the word network, and it totally works that way, because it's like Metcalfe's law, where the brokerage house succeeds, like they beat the ratios because, like you said, they have the agents, and then you want the agents to thrive so that Absolutely. You as a brokerage house can do well as well. So it Absolutely. Only seems to be like, I guess, very uncommon sense to Absolutely. Help the agents out.
Absolutely, right? And then there's so much more, right? Because then we start getting into like market trends and where the industry's going. And I mentioned we're very data driven. I think the world today is data driven, and one of the big things in the world of artificial intelligence and machine learning is data integrity. So, when we look at the mortgage business, what's important for us is data integrity. So when we built our systems and our programs and our workflows for agents to use, we're looking at it from a data standpoint so that they can have opportunity in the future. We don't want our agents to be stagnant, where, I look at the industry today and, some people are running their databases off of Google Sheets or Excel spreadsheets. Some of them have notebooks. Some of them have 3-4 different CRMs. Without that data integrity, you can't optimize and maximize the use of it tomorrow, right? We're not there yet today, right? Crawl, walk, run. But in order to run, eventually we're going to have to start walking. And walking is that data integrity and, looking to the future, right? Mm-hmm. One of the things that our company says very much is that we want all businesses today, and we encourage all businesses and business owners and leaders and even workforce, right, to look at the world today from the perspective of tomorrow. Right? So it's looking ahead to see, where are we going and what can I do today to help get us there? Right? And I use, Tesla as a great example of this, right? Tesla began years ago on putting together the pieces that they needed for eventually what is the self-driving car, right? Amazon began putting in the pieces for what is eventually the largest, digital online retail space in the world today, right? You have to look at the world today from the perspective of tomorrow. And I think that's what we're doing in the mortgage industry.
Mm-hmm. And when you first started, though, you talked about the idea of, you got to crawl, walk, then run. And right now with 160 people in the network, you're definitely walking towards that. that tomorrow. But when you first started, like the first 6 months, when you were just learning to crawl,
Yeah.
what was that like? You know, I think you had, like, what you said, like 6 to 7 agents, like in the first year. Like,
Yeah,
what was that like?
we had 6 agents, and you know what? We're the best of friends today, and we learned a lot of lessons together, right?
Yeah.
We learned a lot of what to do, and more so what not to do. So, you know, what was it like? It was the journey, right? It was the journey. So it was a lot of hard work, a lot of learning together, a lot of commitment, a lot of trial and error, a lot of, is what we're doing right? Is what we're doing wrong? You know, we never roll things out to people. We're impulsive ourselves. Both Kendall and I are a little bit, but we're not impulsive to make decisions for other people. So we'll test it. You know, we'll R&D, we'll do all that kind of stuff, right? But that's what it was in the beginning. So it was just a whole lot of R&D, a whole lot of research, a whole lot of analytics, a whole lot of testing, a whole lot of trial and error, and I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was part of the ride, right?
And so when you started, like, did you and Kendall kind of put a time limit on, like, oh, if we don't hit like this revenue marker by like a year or something, then we're just gonna go back to being mortgage brokers? Or was this kind of just, we have to make this work no matter what?
Yeah, we didn't. You know, that was something that we didn't say to ourselves. We didn't say that we need to make this amount of money. It was all about the change for us, and that's why I was really, really passionate about this business, because it was something that was different. It was something where, you know, we made money, right, and we know how to make money. So if we have to go back to selling mortgages and becoming mortgage agents again, I can do it tomorrow, and I can become very successful at it. But to us, it was all about that change. And we did see rapid change quickly. You know, 6 became 10, which became 20, which became 40, I think, after our first year, right? And then we brought on our first affiliate office, and we launched the network. And then we were running technology on spreadsheets. And then we built our own technology. So we were always advancing. So you know what? It's irresponsible for me to say we weren't hitting targets. We didn't have revenue targets, but we did have markers of progress, right? And we were always hitting those progress markers in terms of evolving and innovating and creating change, right? And even, you know, I look at our training from what it was then. You know, training back then was like, you know, me in a room with 4 other agents kind of talking to them about the business and what they can do to succeed. Now we have a professionally curated training program, which is delivered online, which is delivered through their mobile app, which is, you know, recorded, which is, you know, delivered live in person. We have digital onboarding, and we have the largest free actually online database of mortgage information, you know, right in the palm of our agents' hands. So when we look at these evolutions, and I'm really enjoying this conversation because both my partner and I never actually stop to reflect. We just keep on going. We hit milestones and we pause and high five and on to the next kind of thing.
Right.
So sometimes talking about it is a great way of reflecting back on it.
Yeah, and so if we, you know, stay on this reflection train, what was like in like the very beginning? Like how do you starting like a brokerage house? Like,
yeah.
How do you recruit people? Like what was the process like for you guys? How did you guys map it out, and what was the reality compared to the mapping?
Yeah, so we started with that same vision statement that I gave you in the morning, right? So or earlier in this conversation. So Capital Lending Center is going to provide mortgage agents and brokers with the systems, tools, and support that they need to provide referral partners and clients with a seamless customer experience. So everything we did from that point forward just had to relate back to that vision statement. Right. So we have an idea. We need to build a CRM because, you know, I attribute a lot of my success to CRM, and Kendall had a CRM, and we need to build a CRM because we can't have our agents paying for it like we did. So does that reflect back to that vision statement? Absolutely. Right. We need to build an underwriting center. Why? Because 80% of mortgage agents don't make it past their second year in this business. Why? Because they're spending too much time learning. We need to support them so that they can learn sales and we can support their deal process. Let's build an underwriting center. And then, successful mortgage agents at some point in their career have to hire assistants because they get too busy. How can we alleviate that, or how can we ensure their clients are receiving that same high level of service? Well, they can harness our same underwriting department. We just have to flip it a little bit and tweak it a little bit, right? Agency and marketing support. So it all kind of began evolving like that very slowly, right? And Kendall has a great background, both entrepreneurial from a very young age, from his teens, as well as corporate leadership throughout his 20s. So he definitely brought a tremendous amount of like management experience, and his gift is just knowing people. Like he can read a person and understand what they need and understand what they want and what they're thinking. I think one of mine is understanding market, understanding trends, understanding what's going to happen in economies, and you combine that together, and that just slowly gets you where you need to go, right? Slowly but surely. So yeah, it was the two of us doing everything at that time, right? So recruiting, that was both of us. We would call mortgage agents and talk to them about what we're doing and our vision and where we're trying to go and what we can help them with today. And we got one, and then we got another, and then eventually we hired an administrative person that helped us kind of alleviate some of that workload from us, and she's now taken on the much higher role in our organization. She's a leader in our company, so it's great to see her evolution. Then we hired our underwriting department grew from one underwriter to two to three to four, right? And then we hired a marketing support person. So yeah, it was just really cool to see that we started doing everything hands-on ourselves, and then as we were able to grow and monetize all of it, we were then able to bring on people to support it into what it is today, right?
And so far in this 2.5 year journey, like what has there been like a particular kind of big obstacle that you felt like was like an inflection point where after you overcame it just things became clearer? Like,
oh man,
there's so many ups and downs, so I'm just wondering, was there like a particular like big one that
we face obstacles every single day, unfortunately.
Right.
Like literally you can like name the obstacle, it was put in front of us. Like right from the fact that no one's going to buy into a system where you support the mortgage agent. We had companies tell us we wouldn't make it past our first year, like leaders in our industry, people that I actually look to for advice, saying you're not going to make it past your first year. You're starting a small mortgage brokerage at a time when large mortgage companies are aggregating, and that's what was happening in that moment, right? The bigger companies were buying out the smaller companies just because of administrative costs, and they're like, you're talking about giving stuff to agents? Like, we can barely afford to survive today, right? And I remember the first year at our Christmas party, during my speech, I said that a bunch of leaders in this industry told me 12 months ago when we started that, if you're not doing $100 million a year, you won't succeed. We hit 100 million that August, and we closed the year at 160, right? So, all those people, all those naysayers, we showed them. And then there's the politics of it. And then there's the technology obstacles. And then there's just the mindset obstacles that you face on a daily basis, because we are doing things differently. So, it took a long time for the industry to buy into what our systems and what our beliefs were, right? And still till this day, like obstacles one day after another. And Kendall, if he was here, he would tell you the exact same thing. Our job is seeing that obstacle and figuring out whether we're going to go over it, under it, or around it, right? But there's never something that we're not going to try to get past, right? Because that's just, we're too passionate not to.
And Shubha, as we are kind of wrapping up in the final leg of our interview, a question I like to ask all my guests is, if that 20-year-old Shubha was to look at you right now doing what you are, so that 20-year-old, he's just about to start his logistics business, and he looks at what you're doing, running CLC, what do you think that Shubha's emotional reaction would be to what you're doing now?
I think he'd be proud. I think he would say that I'm on the right path, right? I'm on the right path. If this is the journey that I need to go on to get there, then I'm doing the right thing. And it's all about learning, and it's all about growing as a person, self-development, commitment to your community, commitment back to the world. We owe it to everybody around us to make a positive impact. And I think that Shubha would look ahead to this Shubha, and I'm 40 years old this year, and say, you're on the right path, and I'm going to start it here. You catch up over there, and let's carry it on to get it to 60-year-old Shubha, right?
Good one. Do you wish you could, if you could, what kind of advice do you wish you could have gotten, or you could have given to yourself, like when you were 20?
When I was 20, I was going through it. Like when I started that first company, a lot of it was because I was going through a tough time with the loss of my grandmother. I lost her at the age of 14. I held her in my arms as she passed away to cancer, which drove me to a lot of the philanthropy that I do today. I would say to myself to be strong. I would say that, moments in life are moments in life, and life is a marathon and not a sprint. Because when you're young, you don't see that. You don't see when you're 15 years old and you just lost your grandmother, the person that meant everything to you, that you still have another, 80 years or 70 years of life ahead of you. All you see in that moment is just that this is dark and there's no future and there's no light. So I would just say that, and to anybody listening on this call that's in that moment, just know that life is a marathon and not a sprint. So you just gotta, cry, make sure you get through whatever moment you have to get through today, but know that there's always an opportunity tomorrow.
Awesome. That's a good one. And so as we close off the interview, is there anything that we didn't touch upon that you kind of wish that we did?
No, I mean, I think we covered everything. I think the only thing that I would add in is the philanthropic part. And, I just, because I owe it to my grandmother, I do want to make note that, when I was growing up from the age of 0 to 14, my grandmother raised me. She changed my diapers, she fed me, she played with me, she taught me, she walked me to and from school, she made my lunches for me. She was my shoulder, my rock, and my teacher, right? And when she was diagnosed with cancer, when the summer just before I was going into high school, so it was a very tough moment. But what happened was we reversed roles. So the person who cared for me my entire life, I began to care for her and look after her and support her. And when I was awoken that morning by my parents to come downstairs and hold her because she was passing away, I took that as a moment in my life when I look back today as kind of that time, right? Where now when I look back, that was the moment that made me who I am. Because that moment pushed me to making the world a better place, because that's what my grandmother would have wanted. And all the morals and the values and everything that she instilled with me is what got me to where I am. It's what makes me who I am. And, I'm going to do right by her from that moment to be able to provide for other people, teach them, guide them, and support them the same way that she did to me.
Awesome. That's an amazing way to end the chat. Shubha, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
It's my pleasure, Daniel. Thank you.
Sharing your story. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I definitely do hope that our listeners get a lot of value out of it as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time and for having me.
No problem. Thank you. All right. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope the story was inspiring to you. Hopefully it also helped you expand your perspectives. Hopefully it also made you question the default path that you might have been going on, or the default beliefs you might have had. And maybe now it'll make you even think about doing something about it, doing something different, maybe challenging yourself, being courageous. Who knows? But regardless, I'm really happy that you took some time out of your day to listen to this fantastic story with my guest. And if you would like to somehow, in some way, contribute and help support the podcast, and maybe even just be part of the community that I'm trying to build with the greater OMD Ventures platform, really think about being a stakeholder in the platform. And the quick way to do that is to go to my website, oldmandan.com, and go to the stakeholders page. I believe it's oldmandan.com/stakeholder. And the link is also down below. And that's how you can figure out how you can subscribe, follow to get more updates on the free content, but at the same time also donate by actually just buying me a coffee. That's just how I put it. And you can buy me a coffee a month, coffee a week, or coffee every day of the year. And think about it as the way that, if you wanted to chat with me, you might just bring me out for coffee and buy me a coffee. Or if you wanted to bring one of my guests out to chat, you might buy them a coffee. So just think of it as I'm the service that's doing that for you, so you can just pay me in coffees. Don't worry, everything will still be free. It would just really help if you would like to show your support this way, so that I can use the coffee money to buy myself actual coffees, and also to buy my guests actual coffees, and use the leftover money to actually grow the platform as well as even keep it operationally alive as well, because it all this isn't really free, and it does take a lot of time to build it as well as operate it and hopefully grow it further. So your support would be amazing if you would like to contribute. And so yeah, just check out the website, go to the stakeholders page, and read the different kind of benefits you might even get as a stakeholder. All right, thank you.